As we continue this afternoon's panel, I am just so excited because we're going to hear from some of our newly elected municipal leaders. In the fall of 2017, female candidates from across the country made history in their respective races by being the first women elected to their offices. From the city of Charlotte, whose voters elected Vi Lyles as their first African-American woman mayor, and I actually know Vi, being down in North Carolina for 3 years. I had the privilege to get to know her and consider her a friend. To Manchester, New Hampshire, electing of Joyce Craig as the first female mayor of their city. To Boston, electing 6 women of color to the city council. We're seeing progress. Our final panelists for today are 2 women who have also made history last fall by becoming the first women mayors of their cities, and one of them for a city that didn't even exist yet. So that's a great trick, Mayor Spicer. Yvonne Spicer was sworn into office as mayor of Framingham on January 1st of this year, the same day that Framingham officially became a city. She is not only the first mayor of the city of Framingham, but she is the first African-American woman to be popularly elected to mayor in the state of Massachusetts. A longtime Framingham resident and educator, Mayor Spicer was previously the Vice President for Advocacy and Educational Partnerships at Boston's Museum of Science, where she focused on building partnerships in STEM education with policymakers, school district, municipalities, business, and other nonprofit organizations. Mayor Spicer and I actually had the privilege of serving on the Governor's STEM Council together. I watched your campaign, Mayor, with excitement from afar, and I am delighted to have you with us today. You are a role model and an inspiration. Thank you for being with us. And this fall, Ruth Ann Fuller also was newly elected by she was the first woman elected as mayor of the city of Newton. Before becoming mayor, she was elected in 2009 as alderman at large for Ward 7 in Newton, Massachusetts. A graduate of Brown University and Harvard Business School, Mayor Fuller has experience in the private, nonprofit, and public sectors. She worked as a management consultant for Temple, Barker, and Sloan, and then served as the first strategic planner for WGBH. Mayor, we have had many students from your city come to the Institute to step into the role of senator for a day and take on issues from immigration reform to health care. They have been a true inspiration to our team here at the Institute, and I hope we welcome many of them back in the future. Thank you, Mayor, for being with us today as well. And finally, I'd like to welcome our moderator for today's final panel, Lauren Dzinski. Lauren is political reporter for Politico, and we have been waking up to her insightful Massachusetts playbook in our inbox since she began there in 2013. I said to Lauren when we said hello today, I said, Lauren, I'm so glad to put a name and a face together. I start my day with you every day. Lauren previously covered Boston's political scene as a reporter at the Dorchester Reporter and has been kind enough to lead numerous panel conversations here at the Institute, and we're delighted to have Lauren with us today. Would you please welcome Mayor Spicer, Mayor Fuller, and Lauren to the front of the room to begin this afternoon's panel.
All right. Oh, this is on. Excellent. First off, thank you so much, Dr. Grant, for your kind words. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Ladies and some gentlemen, let's get local. So let's start off, I guess, with the 2 mayors who I'm super excited to talk to. Let's first start off, Mayor Spicer, to dive into what exactly motivated you to run for office. You are a political newcomer. Why now? Why run for office?
Well, it was very interesting because my city was becoming a city, and I was a town meeting member. I also was on the Ways and Means Committee. So when we made the decision to become a city, and a colleague had asked me, would you ever consider running for mayor? And I really gave it some thought, and at first I said, I don't know. And then I think I thought about it, and I really couldn't find a reason not to do it because I felt like I had so much to bring to this job from my experience as a classroom teacher, as an administrator, working in nonprofits, working with business leaders as well as legislators, and I felt I had a pretty well-rounded package. And last but not least, before I made the decision, I went into the president of the Museum of Science, my boss, and I said to him, here's what I'm thinking. And he looked at me with this look of astonishment. He says, Yvonne, I think you would be fabulous at it, and I support you wholeheartedly. So from day one, he supported me in this journey, and he said, and I think you can win. I said, I did.
That's excellent. So, what about the timeline there? Was this something that kind of came up quickly, or explain that decision-making process?
It was a very aggressive timeline because we voted in April to become a city. And then, of course, you could pull papers as early as May 1st to run for office. And so this is probably during this period of time, I finally made a decision to pull papers to run on May 10th. And you needed 500 signatures from across the city. And probably within 10 days, I had over 1,100 signatures.
Wow.
And so I was first to achieve enough signatures to be officially on the ballot. And I said, well, I'm in it now. It's time to get out here and campaign and do more and build a team. And really, it came together very quickly. I am extremely grateful to the team of people that just said, I can volunteer. I will do this. I'll knock doors. I will help fundraise. And I can't say enough about the Women's Political Caucus, Massachusetts Women Political Caucus, and Gail Jackson Blunt, who jumped up behind me and jumped in with both feet right from campaign kickoff. And I'm an unknown, a political unknown, and they jumped in to support me, and it just took off from there. And I didn't have a campaign manager, I had a campaign team that everyone worked like a well-oiled machine, and I could not do this also without the support of programs like Mass Alliance and Emerge. I am an Emerge alum, and Emerge Women. And so I was doing all of this while running for office, taking these different programs and I'm learning a lot about how to run a campaign, how to pull it together. So that was my journey. It was pretty challenging, and still trying to do my full-time job in the process too.
Yeah, hit the ground running there. Now, Mayor Fuller, you had experience in office before you actually ran for mayor. Talk a little bit about that, when you decided to both run for office to begin with, and then your decision to run for mayor.
I love being together with Yvonne. We're lucky enough to have been on a number of panels together, and we're kind of an interesting mix because we've had a little bit of backgrounds. I was a city councilor for 8 years before running for mayor. And I want to give a shout out to Susan Albright, a city councilor from Newton, who has been a mentor and a friend to me on the city council. And we still are serving together in Newton. Wave your hand, Susan. It's wonderful to have her here in the audience. So you heard Karen Polito say it, this idea of first starting really local. I started with my local neighborhood association. It was, this tiny, 8 square block area that I got passionate about. And through that, do you remember also Karen talked about getting to be appointed to be on a board or a commission? Mm-hmm. I raised my hand to get appointed to be on, it was a finance commission. How are the revenues of the city of Newton doing? Got on that. From there, all of a sudden, I was passionate about the issues in Newton. I got to know more and more people. And then here's the key. There was an open seat for the city council. Yes, 3 of us were running for 2 seats, but that power of incumbency, now that I'm mayor, boy, am I beginning to understand just how powerful it is. We both were running for open seats. Mm-hmm. It is a huge advantage. My bravo to any of you who have run for a seat where there's an incumbent in there. 8 years as a city councilor, and best job in the world, but again, we had such an unusual situation. Remember the the national election where Trump was elected. It was a Tuesday, right? Were most of you up at 3 a.m. on Wednesday, kind of
I see a lot of heads nodding.
absorbing that? Wednesday, I'm a Democrat. I was both grumpy and tired. Thursday morning, the mayor of the city of Newton, Seti Warren, called me to let me know that he had decided not to run for re-election. By that afternoon, I had put my name in the hat. So it was, I kind of thought maybe someday I would run, but I had no idea that it was going to be that day, that year, that month, and just a whirlwind after that.
Oh, so it happened fast too.
Very fast.
Yeah.
Right. Although I'll tell you one gimmick. If anybody runs for office, those signatures that you need to get, we had to get 1,000, decided to do it in one day, had tons of volunteers, turned them in like that, and it actually did make the newspapers, and it kind of starts you off really strong. So go get all your signatures all at once.
Yeah, so let's dive a little bit more into the actual campaigning process. There's building the team, and then there's also the critical component of fundraising. Let's start with you, Mayor Fuller. What was that process like, specifically in amassing that team and really, in order to collect 1,000 signatures in one day, that's a lot of manpower.
So let's talk about the money part for a second. How many of you have ever thought about running for office? Couple hands going up. Actually, I didn't look up there. Let's just see. Actually, this is pretty good. I'm guessing maybe a third of the hands went up. Of the 2/3 of you who didn't raise your hands, how many of you was money a big reason? Just a couple of hands. So that's not stopping people from running office. That's interesting. So here's the thing about raising money. Everybody told me I needed to get a finance committee and I needed to spend 2 or 3 hours every day on the phone making phone calls. And I hated both ideas. And I didn't do it. I ended up raising the most money of anybody I raised more than my opponent and more than anybody who's run for mayor outside of the really big cities here. I did it a way that felt comfortable to me. So keep listening to yourself. What feels right to you is right. I did it all by letter. And yep,
Really?
I wrote lots of handwritten notes, and I didn't make any calls.
What did you say in the letter?
It's oddly enough, it's not what's in the letter, it's what you handwrite. Everybody maybe skims the letter. So it's the handwritten note that made all the difference. And I'll tell you what also, my mom would be so proud of me for saying this, it's the thank you note that also matters, fast, handwritten, and that allows you to go back a second time. So it's the handwritten note.
I love that. How much time a day did you spend writing these notes and
took
thank
a
you
long
notes?
time.
Yeah.
Definitely, maybe even longer than if you'd made the phone calls, but it felt, anybody like getting those fundraising calls from politicians? They make me supremely uncomfortable. So I was projecting my own feelings. I don't mind getting the letters. I usually ignore them unless they have a handwritten note, though.
I love that. I love that detail. Now, Mayor Spicer, did you deploy the handwritten letter method?
Oh, most definitely. I did a combination of things. First of all, I made a decision to write a letter to my sphere of influence. I just kind of made a list of all the people I knew in the immediate sphere and really said, who would be supportive of me in this initiative? And I wrote a very heartfelt letter that I'm doing this for the right reasons. I'm bringing my best to this opportunity, and can you help me? And I, and I emailed some, I mailed out some letters, but I did get on the phone and make phone calls. And this is something that I say I learned in the Emerge training, that, get on that phone, call, and we practiced it also. And I'm like, I got to make phone calls to people. I grew up, it's rude to ask people for money. You don't ask people for money. And, but once you did a couple of the calls, you got through it. And then, of course, people said, well, I'd like to host a coffee, or I'd like to do a fundraiser for you. And those were the kinds of things that would happen. And my fundraising, my opponent raised twice as much money as I did. And whether it was $5 or $500, people provided checks, and even teenagers would, here's my babysitting money. I want, young people for Spicer. I mean, that was the kind of grassroots efforts that went into my campaign. And really, I had no idea you had to raise so much money and still feel like you're at a deficit because you didn't have as much, by the time of the primary. So we did it. And what I honestly think worked in terms of fundraising, in terms of this campaign, was knocking on these doors. I wore out 3 pairs of shoes, knocking on doors, and
Wow.
And people making phone calls, and it was just that personal connection that made the world a difference.
Was there a point in the campaigning process, we'll start with Mayor Spicer, where you felt that being a woman and running as a woman was an asset?
It's interesting because I never knew the enormity of me running for this office. I'm used to being the first. I am used to being the first. It's almost a given. Being a woman in technology and engineering, there are not going to be many of us, and I'm more than likely going to be one of only a handful of people of color, if not the only person of color. So that is, for the most part, a given. Being a woman running for this race, the thing that stands out for me is that I think what helped me even more was the fact that I was not immersed in politics. And I was pretty neutral when it came to, keep in mind, Framingham only became a city with less, I think it was 112 votes separated us. So half of the people wanted to be a town, and they were really sad, and half wanted to be a city, and that half that wanted to be a city didn't know why they wanted to be a city. Some of them, they just said, we want change, we want something different. And that was the truth for a lot of people. So I kind of represented that change, that step out of that comfort zone. Clearly this is a highly accomplished woman, that she's done a lot, and she's coming at this for the right reasons. People ask, why do you do this? This is for, I care about my community. I've lived in Framingham for 32 years. And I wanted to bring the best of everything I have learned in all of the opportunities I've had around the world and bring it to Framingham. And I had been in a leadership role for over 20 years. So I said, well, leading schools, leading programs, leading a startup division of the Museum of Science, I can do this. I can lead a city. And so that was pretty much my impetus for it.
Absolutely. What about you, Mayor Fuller?
We had a very dramatic moment in my particular race about gender. I was running against a man who I like very much. He was the city council president, and for most of the race it was pretty humdrum. We were pretty similar on the issues. We had very different demographics. Male, female, he was in the 40s, I'm 60, Jewish, he was Catholic, he's the north side of town, I'm the south side of town, a little bit different educational tracks. His dad was a local firefighter. I grew up in Detroit. My dad was a lawyer. So people have been, I think, focusing a little bit on the socioeconomic, demographic things and not too explicitly about gender, even though all our mayors had been male until exactly 2 weeks before the election. Election's on a Tuesday. I guess it's 13 days before the election. He takes out an ad in the local newspaper, and the opening line goes something like this: I am the only candidate in the mayoral race who has worked continuously for 20 years. Yeah, just have that absorbed. So I'd worked full-time, I'd worked part-time, I dropped out of the workforce, I was home with kids. I had great degrees, I'd done lots in the nonprofit world as a volunteer, and I'm a pretty calm person. I'm not one. I saw red. I really was angry, and there's this. I actually shot back very quickly with a pretty hot email that went out to thousands of people. That was a Wednesday. By the Friday, it was on the front page of the Globe above the fold. And then the whole race, I think, did change. I only won by 372 votes, and I am positive I won because of my gender.
Wow. Wow.
Right.
I just want to talk a little bit more, kind of about, to get a little meta, press coverage of your gender on the campaign trail. Did you feel like you were being properly portrayed and vetted, or did you feel like you were seen through the lens of first female, candidate, or first female mayor, potential first female mayor, or, first African American female mayor? How did that at all get frustrating that was a narrative there?
I think probably for me, one of the most frustrating things, well, she's never led anything. She has no municipal experience, and my credibility, my doctorates, and I say S because I have
Plural.
a couple of honorary ones, and so that was kind of disconcerting, but also that I would, in the final election, my opponent was a lifelong resident of this, Framingham, was a former selectman as well as our state rep. So he had a lot of political capital, and I had none. And so that kind of comparison, well, she didn't have this experience. It never really talked much about my ethnicity at all, but it really just kind of focused more on trying to whittle away at my credentials of what I was bringing to the job, and actually in some ways it backfired too, because some of the mailers were like, oh, she doesn't know this, and kind of used the little ditzy kind of dialogue between women in one ad campaign, and some women got very upset about it, like, oh, it was like a text messaging conversation that was really kind of demeaning to women, and women didn't take favorable to that. And in the words of our First Lady, oftentimes when they went low, I stayed very high. And, it's hard to detract from Barbara Bush pearls and elegance and being a lady. And so that's where I kind of kept the comments, and, and even when I would see it happening, it was really trying to elevate because, did not wanting to get into the muck of it, but, it was evident.
And I think it's really peculiar why people end up voting for you. There's the whole likability factor. Do you want to go have a beer with this person? And I gotta tell you, I don't know anybody who wants to go have a beer with me. That's just not who I am.
You're selling yourself short there.
Well, and I don't drink beer. I mean, it's the whole thing. So there's the likability factor. I think this whole credentials, so, what was my experience, and was it good enough, and did I have what it took to be a mayor? So there's that whole part, which inevitably gets mixed up with gender, I think. And then the hometown thing. Again, yep, I was from Detroit. He was from Newton. And hometown really matters. So there's that part. But was also, I spent a lot of time door knocking, and I really encourage anybody, if you run at the local level, just put on your sneakers, because I think when somebody actually meets you, what was interesting, I haven't asked Yvonne this question, when I would knock on a house and there was any kind of girl in the house, the mother or father would always go get that child to meet me. They didn't go get the little boys. So there's still something going on. They didn't need to teach their boys that a woman could be mayor, but they really wanted to teach their girls that. And I think we need to get in the heads of the boys. We need them to know it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that detail. Did you notice that as well, knocking doors?
I noticed, first of all, sometimes when you're knocking doors, black woman at your door, you're like, do we know you? What do you want? Do we call police or let her through? But for the most part, I think people were very good on the doors. First of all, they had seen, and I made the very calculated decision to put a picture of me on my signs. And it's a line drawing, and I have to give great credit to the late Representative Debbie Blummer, who passed away, and she was Representative Framingham, and she had her photograph, a line drawing of herself on the signs. And so I remembered that because my campaign slogan is, I'm the people's mayor. So the people need to see the people's mayor. So now it's like, I know you. So people feel very comfortable with you. It's the glasses, I recognize you immediately. Knocking on doors, what I found was people were so excited to hear about me. He said, I've read about you, I've seen you, and pictures of you in the newspaper. To hear you, I'm drawn to you. And that was generally the comment, is that you are a real person. You are, very accessible. And to this day, I stay very accessible. I often will travel, and I'll go into a coffee shop, I'll go in the grocery store, I'll go to BJ's, and I do these things too. I know it's my police department, so I don't know, but I still like to do that. So it's that accessibility that makes a world of difference, definitely.
Wow. So I just want to I have a last question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. We've got a bunch of time for Q&A, because I'm very curious to hear what you guys all have to ask about. Last question. You were elected. Congratulations. What's been the biggest surprise that you've had in the last, under a year of actually serving as mayor? We'll start with you, Mayor Fuller.
We joke about this together. I think we both really understood the job pretty well, understood what our day-to-day would be like, how busy and crazy it would be, that it's 24/7. And I had entirely missed this. I've heard Yvonne say the same thing. Nobody told me about how much time each day you spend signing papers, the warrants, the contracts, the payrolls, the large legal documents. So I missed that. Other than that, I wondered, I thought I would like the job. I love the job. It's the most fabulous way to spend your day, your life. I really feel that I have a purpose, and I am surrounded by good people who are trying to make this a better community. I don't feel alone. You kind of said, an executive office, you're by yourself. Are you ever lonely?
No.
Yeah. You're
Sometimes you try to hide.
Right, yes, maybe a little alone time.
Going in the closet.
Yes, right. Yes, right.
It is. This is day 120 for us.
Oh, you're counting.
And yes, it's really awesome. And the interesting dynamic for me is that I'm building a city while trying to lead this city. So we still are trying to find our way at being a city. You know, our school committee is newly elected, our city councilors, and we have 9 of them for the 9 in district and 2 at large. So 11 of them, and some of them were selectmen. So they're trying to say, well, how does a city councilor act differently than the selectman? And reading the charter, interpreting the charter, making decisions and checking in with our city solicitor to make sure we're making the right decisions. Those are the kinds of things that are really guiding a lot of our work thus far. But truly, it is the signing of a paper, and then there's that great feeling, you take Saturday. I started the day on a panel with Ruth Ann on Saturday, got back home to Framingham for gun buyback, then to the drug drop-off, to Earth Day celebration, to a celebration of an after-school program for Latino kids. And, by the time you get home, you're like, did I eat today? Did I, so those are the kinds of things, but you felt so good that there's so many great things happening in the community for the day. So I love every minute of it. And, just to tell you a story, my boss at the Museum of Science called me. He said, so do you miss me? I said, do you miss me? And he's like, I've been watching you, and he lives in a couple of towns over, and he says, you're doing great. I see all the stuff that you're doing, and you're doing really great, and know that I'm here for you. So that's the kind of thing that is really terrific, and a wonderful community of people that have rallied, and they are right there to support and to work together. So, we're getting there, slowly but surely.
That's excellent. Well, that's a wonderful note to open it up to Q&A. We've got folks up in the rafters. We've got down here. I saw your hand shoot up immediately.
Hi, rafter people.
I like being first. Thank you. Thank you. It was an excellent panel. So I like the comment that you made about the boys. Like, nobody was bringing their boys into the room to see. It's like, oh, look, you can do this to the girls, but not telling the boys they could too. And so I have 2 sons and a daughter. And I'm reminded of that regularly. So whenever I do something for my daughter, I'm just like, oh, the boys should read this too. The boys should learn this too. I'd love to hear about how kids are reacting to you now that you are in office. You're in charge, you're a girl. And so how are the girls reacting and seeing that sort of, I guess, possibility? And then how are the boys reacting to it? How is it, are you seeing an impact on them as well?
And can we just get your name and where you're
Sorry.
from, too?
Yeah, I'm supposed to do that, right? My name is Naima Lucky. I work for State Street.
Sounds good. Well, as a former teacher, I taught middle school and high school, so kids are very much connected to me. And the best part was a little 6th grade girl, middle school girl, drew a picture of me, and even down to the T with the short haircut, and she even colored me in nicely and gave me a nice shade of brown. And then I had a sash on that says Mayor with a hand on the hip. So I proudly put that in a frame, and it's in my office right now. And right now, the Boy Scout troops, I mean, they've come in, they've asked questions, and why did I want to do this, and how can they ever be mayor? So I feel like I have an even keel, especially with kids. One group of kids that are real near and dear to my heart, and these are kids, particularly kids of color. And I make a point of, and I have invested a lot of time in a part of my community where it's predominantly people of color, and when they see me, and they're like, oh my goodness, the mayor is here in our neighborhood, in our housing development. She has come to this community meeting, and I make a point because I want them to see me. I want them to be able to come and talk to me. I want them to know that they have an opportunity, just as I did, as I'm a kid from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and look at me now. You can be from somewhere, but you don't have to be that environment. You can outmove any environment that you're in, and so that's real important to me, to be that role model for kids.
Excellent.
I'm still seeing a bit of an imbalance. I'm saying it's the girls, whether the 6-year-old Daisy Scout girls up to the high school girls, are particularly surrounding me, asking me to come visit with them, to speak, to visit their classroom. So it's more girls, but I tell you, I'm still working on the men. Most of our department heads are still men. In that first few weeks when you're in office, you're try to spend a lot of time not in my office, but out in their departments. And with 3 different male department heads, as they were introducing me around and showing me around and introducing me to the men, and then they would introduce me to the girls. That was the word they used when they were turning to the women in their office. So we've had a little work to do, and you can imagine I didn't do it right in front of their staff, but I quickly took them aside. I don't think they'll make that mistake again. But I would also say public safety. Police and fire departments. Our fire department is exclusively male at this point. Our police department is almost all male. And these are paramilitary organizations, very hierarchical, and they are not used to having a woman at the head of it. And there's still some adjustment going on, but it's almost like door knocking. Again, you gotta really look somebody in the eye and talk one-on-one. I'm finding the group stuff, I'm certainly doing it, but I'd say that's not nearly as effective as having the individual conversations. I'm finding they're coming around.
Excellent. Next question, right there. Oh, someone with a microphone. There we go.
Hi, my name is Casey Lenaden. I had a question regarding what would you advise Black women that are running for state office, and how would you encourage them in getting all the support they need? Because one thing is to overcome being a female, then being an African-American female, and then being a strong public advocate, which is mostly where you're going to get more hate. So how would you encourage them?
Well, first and foremost, because I see you looking at me, I'm gonna this. First and foremost, I always have been fortunate to surround myself with mentors. And I think it's so important, you know, I'm a strong advocate for each one teach one. And by that meaning that I'm in this seat and my job, my responsibility is to mentor other women and other women of color that want to move in this direction. Because once again, I didn't have a wide range of support in office and fundraising, but one thing that I did have is a lot of heart. And I came with a lot of self-esteem, very, very strong self-esteem. And I reached out to people like the Massachusetts Women Political Caucus. And once I got that endorsement, I was able to get other endorsements like Emily's List, which was unheard of in a local race. And surround yourself with very strong women. I like my circle of women. It's a rainbow coalition of women, because there are certain things that, you know, and then sometimes I'll say to my white sisters, how do you deal with your people today? You know, I will make it say, your people are acting out. And so that's the circle, and that's one of the things, diversify your circle and making sure that you have people that think differently than you, that will challenge you, that will push you, and that will check you. And so you need to have all of that and I also think too, when we as women look at running for office, we need to, if some woman says, I'm gonna run for office, we don't need to question her. Because truly, there were people who said, she can't win. Black woman cannot win, she can't win. I won. And so that's the other thing too, when women are running for office, all of us need to get behind her. Whether it's throwing $5, $10, $15 or $100 her way, we need to get behind her. We want to help make phone calls, make signs. That's the way you build your momentum. And truly, that's how I kept building momentum. One endorsement after another, and other people supporting me, and I felt I was unstoppable. And bring it. And that was my true feeling. And just this month, if you get Essence magazine, I will be featured in the May edition of Essence magazine.
Oh, wow.
So
grab a copy, everyone.
And the best part, that was an edition with the 19 other African American mayors across the country. So we did a photo shoot together, and that was really terrific, including Vi Lyles, who is in the photo too. So.
Excellent.
And the only thing I'd add is Yvonne knows who she is. She is so authentic, so real, so herself. That authenticity and that strength. I'm one town over from Jeanette McCarthy, who's sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. She is authentic, real. She knows herself. Just know who you are and grab it and be you. Just be you.
We have another question over here. Yes.
Hi, my name is Maya Jamaldeen. Mayor Flora, I just want to tell you, I don't drink beer, but I would love to have coffee with you. And for Mayor Spicer, I would love to have coffee also with you. And I have the same fear that, whenever I do door knocking, I fear that, they would call the police on us because we are on the same list. So my question, it's not actually a question, it's just I hope that we support also women that immigrants. And, we believe in them. These women, they have the right to represent us, to be represented, and to run for an office. So we have to work to get them there and win their race.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We have another question over there in the striped shirt.
Thank you. I'm Sam, and I'm an environmental science student at Northeastern University. And my question is, a lot of today has been about getting women more involved in leadership positions in politics. And I'm wondering what suggestions or strategies you have for getting more women involved in STEM, and especially encouraging girls to get an interest early on in STEM.
I like that question. I can put my other hat on. And my background being in STEM, first and foremost, getting a mentor is so important. And finding those internships. I know even where I worked at the Museum of Science, and we have internships, we host several hundred interns every year. So do get yourself involved in an internship, and you said environmental science. So you want to volunteer your services to get into the environment, to help people learn about contamination. Those are the kinds of things that you connect yourself to. The Department of Public Health, another entity that would probably utilize your services very well, or environmental protections. And, that's the kind of thing that makes a difference. And when you can connect yourself through an internship, volunteer experiences, I guarantee it will end up in a job too for you too. So stay focused and also make those connections. Just keep making those connections, and it'll definitely work out for you. And I, as a woman in STEM, and been in STEM my whole life, I didn't know anything else but technology and engineering. It was being supported and told that I could do this, and keeping forward and keeping it moving. So congrats to you. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, and keep it up. Thanks.
I'll also add, as a mayor, you get to be a leader. You actually do have some power. Any of you, who has hiring power in this room? Raise your hand if you've got hiring power. So for those of us who are lucky enough to have the hiring power, the making sure you've got women in leadership roles and that you're hiring in the non-traditional departments for women. I was over at our Newton North High School this morning, starting there. I was so pleased. The head of the math department is this strong woman. We just hired this fabulous African-American woman to be our head of HR. That's maybe more traditional for a female, but hard to find an African-American in those roles. For those of us who are hiring, you can't just take the applications that are coming in. You actually have to work at it and get people to apply and seek out a network to get people to apply to the jobs. So put yourself in a position where somebody who is networking and looking for you because you're female can find you. So keep doing, it's great you're here today. Keep introducing yourself to people.
Excellent, I love that. We have a question up there. Yep, yeah, sorry, microphone runners. There we go. We'll get over here. I don't mean to ignore you guys.
Hi, so my name is Samantha. I'm here with the New Hampshire Legislative Youth Advisory Council. We're the statutory committee set up of 23 high school and college students that advise the legislature on matters regarding youth. We're actually really lucky. We're split 60-40 and girls have the majority.
Nice.
Yeah. We also have a female legislative co-chair and a female co-chair of the committee. I'm the community outreach director. So I'm here officially with the ELIAC, but I'm in the process of starting a youth leaders network. I've been involved in nonprofit and politics since I was 14. I'm 19 now. And so my question is, I hear a lot of people talking about young students and college students and mentorship, and I'm trying really hard to get mentors involved in my youth leaders network. So I'm just putting a plug out there. I'm thanking you for what everyone's been saying about wanting to be mentors, but if you know, like, if you're saying, oh, I'd really like to be a mentor, but I have no idea how to get involved in that, come talk to me. You can't miss me. I'm wearing very loud pants and shoes. Because we're definitely trying to get girls, guys too, but especially girls, and seeing if we can do another 60-40 type split in my organization and just to add resources. I mean, I'm tired of having to Google how to write a press release. I want to have a mentor who can tell me, you know, here's how we write a press release, here's how we get involved in other organizations. And I'm good at fundraising. I just had a fundraiser yesterday, but I want to be able to talk to people who run Girl Scouts. I know a bunch of people were talking about that earlier. I want to know how they get everywhere with the cookies. Like, I want to know how to get everywhere with the cookies. So things like that, so that I can, you know, have my organization every place. So if you're interested in mentoring, please come talk to me, and thank you so much for everything you're doing. I'm so inspired by you guys, so thank you.
So you came to the right room. All right, questions over here? Over here? I saw one up there. Yes.
Hi, my name is Marie. I'm with the Mass Farmers Markets Association. And I'm one of the first African American and female board chair for the Mass Farmers Markets. And I was able to do that because I was able to establish a good relationship with the executive director, who's a male and who kind of invited me onto the board. But my concern is, in piggybacking off of the mentorship question, because of the whole Me Too movement and all of these sexual harassments, what advice would you have for women building mentorship relationship with males? And because I've noticed, at least in the past year, there is friction there, unspoken friction. So how do we go about cultivating those relationships without being masked by, and these are real issues, we know that exist, but that don't sort of poison, you know, innocent relationships, mentor relationships between male and female?
That is a great question. Thank you.
It's a hard one, I gotta tell you, and I think we're all trying to figure this out together. I don't know that I have great answers for you. The whole world, thankfully, is really changing right now, and male, female, and also in hierarchical situations, it's tricky. It's a delicate dance. You know, we started off about talking about going out for a beer. I'm not sure how comfortable I would be going out for a beer with the man who wasn't my husband, and on a business, if I was in Washington, D.C., and it was just the two of us. You know, the whole world is getting peculiar, and I think you really do want to have some really close female friends who you can keep talking about this with, and love to continue the conversation. It's hard.
You know, and I will say to you, being a woman in technology and engineering, so you can only imagine that my whole world has been filled with just men. And most of my professional career, I've worked exclusively with men. And so, you know, and I am fortunate to have mentors, and most of my mentors are men. So yes, as most women have experienced your share of harassment here or there. But I also, I think there's something that happens as you get older. You get a little more vocal, and when you're 20-something, your professional career is just starting out, so you try not to make too much noise, but you know who to not be alone in the room with, and, you know, come on, Gladys, I need you in this meeting with me, or something, you know, and so you learn to navigate. But here's the thing that I am so excited and happy about right now. Women have said, I'm tired of navigating. I've had enough. And I'm going to make noise, and I'm going to make loud noises. And this is one of the things with this Me Too movement that I'm excited about. I'm happy women are finding their voice. And I'm happy when, you know, when someone says, X happened to me, women need to tell someone else so other women are on alert. And the more women that are aware of certain behaviors and can band together, and in this day and age of cell phones, video, you know, you can even garner your own evidence here of things happening to you. So this is the kind of thing that I feel very strongly about, is finding voice. And when women shy away from pursuing something because of situations of sexual harassment, it is time. It is time for us all as women to get vocal. And that's one thing I can say.
Absolutely. So we have time for one final question. Oh, yep. Hold on, we've got a microphone coming so everyone can hear.
Hi, how are you? Hi, my name is Gail Jackson. I'm the president of the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus. And hi. Thank you. And I'd like to actually just continue on this subject for 1 minute, because I really think it's important. It was a question that I was going to ask earlier today, where because of these times that we're living in right now, it's very, very uncertain, you know, how to navigate, for women to navigate. In the office environment, you know, when you're, you know, working in an office with someone and it's just, you know, the two of you. But also, I think just in terms of how we're communicating as women, I think that we have to be careful of not to make men feel so uncomfortable that they are uncomfortable in interacting and engaging with us. I think that there are a lot of good men, you know, who are doing some good things and who have done great work in supporting women. And so I think that we have to acknowledge that, but I think we also have to make it clear that the type of behavior that they have become accustomed to living and treating women in a certain way, that's unacceptable. So I think we have to be very specific when we talk about what we will not tolerate anymore, what's unacceptable, and parents who have young boys have to teach them at a very young age what's not acceptable any longer. It's no longer the all-boys club or the all boys or men's world, but there's an equal balance here. and that we have to start treating women with more respect. And I think, I just think also too that sometimes we have to be very careful about not making women feel so uncomfortable that they become threatened. Because I've actually been hearing some undercurrents about how certain men are feeling, even in elected office, about women sort of like getting trained to take over my jobs. And this is a real threat to them. So I think that we have to find a balance there in order to continue navigating in this space we're in.
Good point, Bill. Good point. Very good point.
Great. All right. Well, I think this is a solid note to end it on. Mayor Fuller, Mayor Spicer, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And thank you, all of you.